Guten Yardening, everybody! Today's video marks the first in a series where we talk about why we garden. And I think that this series is going to be both informational and, we hope, inspirational to you. Now, given the fact that we saw a survey recently that showed that up to 20 million new people, first-time gardeners, took up the craft here in the United States during 2020, I imagine that there are probably lots of questions, especially since there are a lot of new gardeners out there who are brand new to this, trying to decide if it is worthwhile, if it's something that's actually going to be fulfilling. Well, in this series, we're going to talk all about that, all about our journey of sharing the growing of our own food, our own fresh organic produce, and also growing our community as a community of gardeners. And so in this series, we have lots of different topics that we're going to address, and I think you'll likely connect to many of them because we're going to try to put into words our rationale behind this amazing experience of gardening. First, let's talk about what it means to grow our own organic food here at Guten Yardening. This past season, we grew over 40 varieties of fruits and vegetables here on less than a tenth of an acre of land. So we don't have a massive plot of land, but we're still able to grow so many different varieties and a great deal of organic food that we can then use to feed our family for the entire year. One of the things that we set up at the beginning of this past year was this idea of a Grow 365 challenge. And what that meant for us was that we were going to be growing our own food, feeding our own family from that food 365 days a year. We would have enough produce, enough that we could produce that would be able to feed our family that entire time. And with the effort that we've put in, that has definitely been the case. I can tell you that we have not gone to the grocery store to buy any fresh produce other than carrots, because we don't grow enough carrots, in over a year. I think, given the size of our land, I think, given the amount of vegetables that we need to eat, that's something that we can say is a success when it comes to trying to grow our own food to get toward this idea of self-sufficiency. And what's the most important bonus out of all of that? Well, the food that we're growing is organic. The food that we're growing is the highest quality because it's the freshest food, because we go outside and we pick it and we're not waiting for it to be shipped from somewhere else and spend multiple days losing that nutritional content. Instead, we're getting it right out of the ground. We know what's gone into it. We have complete control over the growing situation, and therefore we are giving the best of the best food that we can grow to our family. And because of our goal to share this journey, we created this Guten Yardening channel, and we started growing a community of people, both gardeners and those who just have an interest in gardening. And that has been an incredible experience because as we continue to grow the members of our community, we're getting so much feedback, we're getting so much interaction between community members. So we're able to learn from that community, we're able to share what we've learned from our experiences, from our experiments, so we can provide some of the knowledge that we have or that we gain from these new things that we've done in the garden. And we've been able to take the knowledge of an impressive community and apply it to our own work here. So you're seeing our successes, our areas where we need to improve, and we're doing that together as a community. And that is an incredibly rewarding process. Now, if you don't have a YouTube channel like we do, and that's not really where your focus is, the idea of being part of that larger gardening community is an incredible feeling. You know, I was looking up to see an approximation of how many people or how many families in the United States were part of this gardening community. And according to the best statistic that I could find, we're looking at about 32 million families as of 2019 who take part in gardening. 32 million here in the US alone. And that does not count the brand new gardeners, those 20 million new people, individuals who took up gardening for the first time in 2020. Now, is everyone going to stick with it? Is everyone going to see the value? Well, maybe not. But that comes back to the purpose of our channel, and really this series in particular is this idea of spreading our rationale and talking about why we garden. Because if that connects with you, if that can give you some rationale of your own, some reasoning that makes sense, that aligns with your way of thinking, then maybe you'll continue this process. You'll continue like we are on that journey towards self-sufficiency, regardless of the size of the area that you have to grow in. Because we can always work to take advantage or take greater advantage of our space, whether that means vertical gardening or just in general finding new or experimental ways to grow things that you haven't considered before that are going to result in a better harvest, a better yield for you as you're growing your own food. So let's talk about one of the main reasons why, and I've hinted at it already so far, that we're producing our own organic food here at Guten Yardening. And that is this idea of food security. Food security, I think, is something that is often at the back of our minds, something that we may be considering, and then it comes to the foreground when we start to see food shortages, or as is the case here in the US right now, supply chain disruptions, where some of the food that we might want is not going to be readily available to us. At the same time, because of some of these disruptions, because of a lot of other factors this past year, the cost of food has risen. According to the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture, the price for fruits and vegetables has gone up around 3% this past year, and the price for food that you're buying outside the home has gone up as high as 5%. Now that percentage may not seem like much, but if you add that to the overall cost of everything else that's going up, for example, the cost of lumber that's still pretty high right now, what you're looking at is an expense that is getting higher and higher year after year, and on top of that, the possibility that the thing you want might not be there if the supply isn't able to come in. So what we're attempting to do by gardening is to remove our dependence on that supply chain, or on the possibility of a food shortage disrupting the quality and the types of foods that we're actually able to give to our family. Now that is a lot of work, and I'm sure others will tell you that the startup costs for gardening can be pretty substantial. Of course, there are ways around that. There are creative ways to get started for less, the way you use your soil, the way you use the raised beds, etc., that you're trying to grow. There are plenty of creative options out there. We've done a few of them on our channel. But the thing you have to remember about gardening is, just like anything else, in the long run, if you have a plan in mind for creating the space that you want, and year over year you're consistent in what you do, the startup costs start to go away. For example, if I'm buying seeds for a tomato plant the first year, well, every year after that, if I'm cautious and I'm saving some of the seeds, I'm going to be able to use the seeds from some of what I've grown, and I'll be able to plant that the next season and the next season. So if we take care and plan accordingly, the costs of gardening will decrease, the amount of supplies we need, etc., will decrease, even as the costs of food outside the home may continue to rise and the supply may not be there. So really what we're left with is the cost of feeding many of the vegetables and really amending our soil and fertilizing our soil as needed, and that is a lot less than those startup costs. So again, year over year, we're diminishing our costs while increasing our yields and our returns. You know, one thing we can't do is to predict the future. Who could have said that 2020 was going to see so many new gardeners, was going to see shortages of seeds? If you experienced that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Shortages of canning materials. There was so much that was out of our hands. But what we can do is to try to take advantage of our property, of the space that we have, to grow as much of that healthy, fresh produce as possible so that we can ensure that we're feeding our family the best in a cost-effective and predictive manner. Because that's one thing we do have in our hands. Well, we hope you enjoy the start to this series. Stay tuned because we have a whole bunch more topics coming that explain why we garden, and I think you're going to thoroughly enjoy them. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give us a like, leave us a comment, remember to share and subscribe, and most importantly, remember, when you're with us, you are good to grow.